I still remember the exact sound of his voice that morning. Cold, certain, like he already owned the air I was breathing. "Pay triple the rent by tomorrow," he said, "or get out. My name is Alina." For 3 years, that small 2-bedroom apartment on Maple Street had been the only place that felt like mine. After the divorce, after losing almost everything, those 4 walls became my quiet restart. I painted the kitchen soft yellow. I hung curtains that caught the afternoon light just right. I planted herbs on the tiny balcony. Every month I paid the rent on time, never late, never a complaint. The man who collected it was Mr. Harlan, the landlord, who lived 2 floors above me. He always smiled in the hallway, always asked about my job, always said I was the perfect tenant. That morning the smile was gone. He stood in my doorway holding a printed notice, eyes flat. "New ownership rules," he told me. "Market rates have changed. Triple the rent starting tomorrow, or I will have the locks changed by noon." I laughed at first. It had to be a joke. Triple, from $1,200 to $3,600, on a single income. With the savings I had left after the divorce already stretched thin, I asked him for time, for a conversation, for any explanation. He only repeated the same 2 options: pay or leave. I closed the door and sat on the floor of my living room, the notice still in my hand. The walls I had painted suddenly felt temporary. The curtains looked like they belonged to someone else. Fear moved through me in waves, first disbelief, then panic, then a heavy, quiet sadness. I had nowhere else to go, no family close enough, no extra money waiting in an account. That night I barely slept. Every sound in the building made me think of keys turning in locks that no longer belonged to me. But what I didn't know that day was that the man standing in my doorway was not who he claimed to be. And the paper he held was not the only paper that mattered. The next 48 hours felt like walking through fog. I called the number on the notice. It rang and rang. I knocked on his door upstairs. No answer. I went to the local housing office and sat under fluorescent lights while a tired clerk explained that verbal threats were one thing, but written notices had rules. Still, without proof of ownership or a proper lease violation. They could only advise me to document everything. Document everything. That was the first small spark. I pulled out every rent receipt I had kept in a blue folder under my bed, every transfer confirmation, every text message where Mr. Harlan had written "Received, thank you, Elena." I laid them across my kitchen table like puzzle pieces. Something about the dates bothered me. The payments had always gone to a personal account, never a company name. The original lease I signed 3 years ago had a different signature at the bottom, faded, almost careful. I had never questioned it. I was just grateful someone would rent to a newly divorced woman with thin credit. That night, I searched the county property records online. My hands were shaking so hard I had to type the address 3 times. When the page finally loaded, the owner's name was not Harlan. It was a trust, a family trust. And listed as the sole beneficiary was a name I recognised only from old family papers I thought I had lost years ago. My late grandmother's name. I sat back in the chair and stared at the screen until the words blurred. My grandmother had passed 5 years earlier. She left almost nothing, or so I had been told by relatives who barely spoke to me after the funeral. One of those relatives was my uncle, the same man who now lived 2 floors above me under a different last name. The same man who had introduced himself as Mr. Harlan when I first answered the rental ad. The betrayal settled slowly, then all at once. He had watched me move in with boxes and a broken heart. He had taken my rent every month. He had smiled in the hallway while quietly rewriting the story of what I owned. The apartment was never his to rent. It had been held in trust for me. He had simply stepped into the role of landlord and hoped I would never look deeper. I felt shattered. Not just by the money or the threat of losing my home, but by the quiet calculation of it. Someone who shared my blood had chosen to make me feel small and temporary in a place that was already mine. I cried until my throat hurt. Then I wiped my face, printed every record I could find, and placed the original trust documents, the ones I had finally located, in a locked box of my grandmother's things on the table beside the eviction notice. Pain turned into something sharper. Not rage. Clarity. The next morning I did not pack a single bag. Instead, I walked upstairs and knocked on his door. When he opened it, already wearing that same flat expression, I held out 2 papers. The first was his eviction notice. The second was the recorded deed and trust document with my grandmother's seal and my name as beneficiary. "I won't be paying triple," I said quietly. "And I won't be leaving. This building is mine. It has been since the day she left it to me. You have been collecting rent on property you never owned." His face changed in stages, first confusion, then recognition, then a pale, tight silence. He tried to speak. I simply placed copies of every receipt, every transfer, and the county records on his hallway table. I told him the housing authority and the county assessor already had the same files. I told him a formal demand for every dollar he had taken would arrive by certified mail within the week. He did not argue long. There was nothing left to argue with. Within days, the truth moved through the building. Other tenants learned they had been paying a man who had no legal right to collect. Within 2 weeks he was gone, not because I forced him out with anger, but because the paper trail left him no place to stand. The money he had taken was returned through the proper channels. The locks were never changed. The yellow kitchen stayed yellow. The herbs on the balcony kept growing. I still live here. Some evenings I sit by the window and remember how close I came to walking away from a home that already belonged to me. The fear was real. The betrayal was real. But so was the quiet strength that rose when I finally stopped accepting someone else's version of my story. If there is a lesson in all of this, it is simple. Know what is yours. Keep the papers. Ask the questions even when the answers feel uncomfortable. And never let anyone, not even family, convince you that you are only a guest in your own life. Justice did not arrive with shouting. It arrived with truth, carefully gathered and calmly placed on the table. And that was enough.